The media is absolutely positively terrified. They're so worried that Donald Trump is actually going to get the immunity that I would argue he kind of deserves and needs, and basically every president probably deserves and needs. But they're just, one headline after another. We got a few here I can show you in the New York Times. The New York Times is absolutely terrified, and they're putting out headlines like how a Supreme Court immunity ruling could affect Trump's election case. You see, they're really worried. They're really worried that they're going to come back and say, you know what? He's got immunity. So bye-bye, Jack Smith. Bye-bye, Fani Willis. Bye-bye, Arizona people that are doing what they're doing in Arizona right now. And, well, it could put everything, even with the Stormy Daniels stuff, into jeopardy. So they're terrified. This is one headline. Let me share with you another headline that just came out. This again in the New York Times. Conservative justices make unexpected argument over Trump's immunity. Thursday's Supreme Court hearing was memorable for its discussion of coups, assassinations, and internments, but very little about Donald Trump's conduct. So they're setting the stage here. They're setting the stage, I would argue, for total anarchy, because the idea here is if you're part of the media, if you're part of the left, you're not going to believe what the Supreme Court does, because the Supreme Court is somehow inherently, in their view, if they don't vote the way they want them to vote, corrupt. Just listen to Harvard law professor Larry Tribe on the issue, speaking on MSNBC.
Joining me now, I'm so glad we have a new guest, Professor Emeritus, I guess, Lawrence Tribe, who has taught constitutional law at Harvard for 5 decades. Professor Tribe, thank you very much.
Good to be with you, Andrea.
And especially propitious right now with this trial going on and with the Supreme Court argument. So let's look at the big picture. How significant do you think the case is right now, before I ask you more about the Supreme Court?
Well, it's really a pair of cases. The case that's going on now is very significant because it's not just about hush money. It's about a plot to become president of the United States by influencing people to hide information and committing crimes in order to hide information that Donald Trump thought might prevent him from winning the election. And now we have bookends. The Supreme Court argument is about steps that Donald Trump took while president, after losing the election to Joe Biden, to remain in power. And the two cases go together. The case that the Supreme Court is considering is one in which it's extremely important that there be a trial with a verdict one way or the other before the American people decide whether Donald Trump should become president again. And what we heard in the Supreme Court yesterday makes it almost certain that there won't be such a trial. The court has gone along with the Trump strategy of delay, 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 and that's shameful. The court is not performing its function of protecting democracy and the American people.
Do you believe that the court should have been more open to the prosecution's original argument that there is no, sweeping immunity? Because they certainly came down on a number of the justices, very clearly came down on the side of, including some of the liberals, that there should be some limited immunity, some immunity for official versus a truly personal, personal acts. And in likely remanding that to the lower court, to the district court, this could take months to decide what's official, what's personal, more hearings, more appeals.
And it's the wrong question. I mean, that's really the irony. The special counsel in pages 46 to 47 of his brief listed a number of obviously private acts that involve the former president's dealings with Rudy Giuliani and others to get fake electors and so on. They round out the picture, and Justice Barrett in particular made clear in her questioning of John Sauer, counsel for Donald Trump, that there's nothing in the Constitution that prevents prosecuting the president for those private acts. But when it comes to the pressure he put on the vice president and his communications to Congress, there seems to be a view on the part of 4 justices. We don't know if it's 5, but there seems to be a view on the part of 4 justices that information either can only be used as evidence to round out the picture or can't be used at all. And as Mr. Dreeben, who represented the special counsel, made clear, that turns the Constitution upside down. What made Donald Trump's actions at the end of his presidency so dangerous, and indeed the most serious of possible crimes against the Constitution, is that he was using the powers of the presidency, his power to lean on Congress and other powers, in order to violate the Constitution's provisions for ending the term when you lose the election. It's the hallmark of emperors and dictators and kings and monarchs that they don't have to listen to the people when the people have told them to go. And
okay, forgive me, I've heard enough.
The crime.
All right, because this is their argument. All right, sorry guys. I mean, you can go watch MSNBC if you want to see the whole thing. But sort of the headline from here is that he is, well, saying, and I'll just quote it for you, the Supreme Court is not performing its function of protecting democracy and the American people. In other words, bad Supreme Court. Because their view, and this is the prosecution's view, Jack Smith's view, is that Donald Trump was out there trying to steal the election. Well, the view of Donald Trump and his lawyers is that actually he was trying to save the whole process by saying, let's make sure that we actually have the proper counting of those votes, et cetera, et cetera. And that in that sense, you're turning it on its head, right? Because 2 very, very different views. And the danger with all of this, let me just be perfectly clear, is that it can be so highly politicized. I mean, how can a president do anything and not be at risk for being sued criminally, civilly, everything, right? After the fact. There's the point that Mike Davis, who was a former clerk at the Supreme Court, was just making yesterday on his Twitter feed, and I brought that up with you guys, and he was saying effectively that, hey, Obama could be gone after because Obama mistakenly killed 2 Americans in a drone attack when trying to go after some people in Syria. And so those American families could have gone after him and said, hey, you know what? That was effectively the murder of these individuals. And so you can see how it just could kind of spiral out of control. And anything that somebody didn't like, you could go after the president for. Anything and everything. I mean, if you wanted to, you could say, all right, well, you gave money to Israel or you gave money to Ukraine and, you know, these people died as a result of this. I mean, it's just actually really impossible to say you can go after the president for all these various crimes. Now, like on a personal level, sure, like if he decides he's going to knock off a family member, you've got a whole different thing. But that's not really what we're talking about here. I mean, it's really not. They may have to carve it out, but I have a feeling when they carve it out, they're going to say that he's protected for things like what we saw actually transpire.